welcome everyone to another episode on Awaz-e-Haqiqat, which also kind of translates to the voice of truth. I am your host, Chris Malika Bhadra, and depending on whichever part of the world you're watching or listening to me, I am talking about community journalism. The amazing work my guest has been doing in promoting journalism, bringing us news, and how it also affects us as a community. So I am joined by Indira Laisram, who is also joining me from Melbourne, a media professional with a Master of Arts in English from NEHU, India, and a Master of Social Policy from the University of Melbourne. Indira is also a recipient of the Judith Neilson Institute grant in 2020, with over 20 years of experience in writing and editing for print, news agencies, and online media outlets in both India and Australia. She has published, among others, in the Hindu, the Economic Times, the Times of India, the Hindustan Times, the Indian Express, the Asian Age in London, and Businessworld magazine. Currently, she is with Indian Sun, which is a magazine for the Indian diaspora in Melbourne. On that note, a very good evening, India. How are you doing?
Thank you very much, Chris, for having me on your show. Well, the wonderful job that you're doing. Keep it up.
Thank you, Indra. It's totally my honor to be finally speaking with you. All right, let's get into the conversation, Indra. What you do is amazing, and I've been following the Indian Sun for quite a while, and ever since I saw it, I was like, I have to speak with you. So on that note, community journalism is something that's very, very needed, Indra. The first thing that I would want to know from you is, how do we negotiate the challenges to values and traditions, which is posed by contemporary media and the market systems?
Thank you, Chris, for that question. I think negotiating the challenges to values and traditions posed by contemporary media and the market systems require, a multifaceted approach. Firstly, I think it's essential to foster critical thinking and media literacy among individuals to help them discern between factual information and misleading content.
Right.
So additionally, promoting ethical advertising practices and responsible media production can sort of, mitigate the negative impacts of commercialization on cultural values.
Yeah.
But I should also add one thing that, of course, we don't have huge volume of advertising, so that kind of, is sort of, in control. And furthermore, engaging in open dialogue and collaboration between stakeholders, including policymakers, media producers, and cultural leaders can facilitate, the development of strategies that, balance economic interests with cultural preservation. I think ultimately it's also about finding a delicate equilibrium between embracing innovation and safeguarding, this cultural heritage that we have.
Absolutely. Thanks, Indra. You've highlighted a very beautiful point, which is like the balancing of contemporary and the traditional lifestyle, you call it culture, whatever. But on that note, Indra, we're living in the 21st century, right? So in today's date, is modern day journalism and print or digital media or both, are they promoting a new kind of universal human values? And if they are these values hostile to historic traditions, in your opinion?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. And before I start, on sort of, giving my yarn, I should say that because we are so much into digital, journalism now, and because the Indian Sun is completely a digital e-magazine, we stopped printing after COVID. I think the best part about digital, journalism is that we don't have to take, several flights to reach a place or to, travel, that kind of thing. So anyway, but in regards to, specifically to the question, I think modern day journalism and print digital media undoubtedly have a significant influence on shaping societal values and norms. While they may promote certain universal human values such as freedom of speech, equality, and social justice, whether these values are inherently hostile to historic traditions really depends on various factors, including the content and interpretation. So on one hand, the promotion of universal human values by modern media can be seen as a positive force for social progress and cultural evolution. But, by advocating for principles like human rights and inclusivity, media outlets can challenge oppressive traditions and promote, positive social change.
Right.
For example, in investigative journalism, exposing systemic injustices or advocating for marginalized communities can lead to greater awareness and activism, ultimately challenging outdated traditions that perpetuate inequality or discrimination.
Yeah. Yeah.
But however, it's essential to recognize that the promotion of universal human values by the media can sometimes clash with deeply ingrained historic traditions and cultural norms.
Yes.
So in some cases, traditional values may be perceived as incompatible with modern principles of equality, diversity, and individual rights. So this tension can lead to resistance or backlash from those who feel threatened by perceived challenges to their cultural identity
Right.
or beliefs.
Yeah.
And also the impact of media promotion of universal human values can vary depending on the cultural context and the way these values are framed. So for instance, Western-centric narratives of progress and development may clash with non-Western traditions and worldview, thereby leading to accusations of cultural imperialism or neo-colonialism.
Right.
You know what I mean? So to sort of summarize, while modern day journalism and media can play a vital role in promoting universal human values and challenging outdated traditions, I think the relationships between these values and historic traditions is complex and multifaceted.
Yeah.
So it's essential to approach these issues with nuance, with sensitivity, and an understanding of the diverse cultural context in which they sort of arise.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. That was very well explained, and I think your answer was a more holistic view of how we view things from a layman perspective as well.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
when you mentioned about earlier, you mentioned on a balance, and then you said that there's a little bit of a clash between contemporary world and your ideologies, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
In both of that, what is then good journalism, right? And then how does it impact the fabric of our societies and, more importantly, the youth in our communities?
Okay. I come from an old school journalism, I would say, because I went to a journalism school, and we were taught something called the inverted pyramid. So basically it refers to a story structure where the most important information, is presented first.
Right.
And the who, what, where, why, they appear at the start of the story, followed by supporting details and background information. Okay, that's the objective part. But good journalism and but the basic thing is the same in the sense that good journalism encompasses principles such as accuracy, fairness, objectivity, accountability, right? So it involves research, fact checking, and presenting information in a clear and unbiased manner. So an ethical journalism serves as a watchdog, holding power to account, fostering this informed public discourse and safeguarding democracy.
Right.
So the impact of good journalism on, if you call, the moral fabric of society, especially among the youth, is profound. So that's why you have informed citizenship, because good journalism provides citizens, including youth, with accurate information about everything, local, national, global events. And so they are, in that sense, so if that happens, then since they're better informed, they become better equipped to participate in democratic processes, make informed decisions and hold officials accountable. And then again, it also, sort of gives way to critical thinking. So if you're exposed to, quality journalism, it definitely encourages critical thinking skills among the youth. They're able to analyze different perspectives, evaluate evidence, and then learn to discern credible information from misinformation or propaganda.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's also ethical values, like, so journalism that upholds ethical standards, they can serve as a moral compass for society, right? Then civic engagement is one aspect, because if, good journalism, through good journalism, youth can learn about social issues, community needs, and inspires them also to become actively engaged in civic life.
Right.
Yes, so I think these are some of the things that are important. But overall, I think good journalism plays a vital role in sort of shaping the moral fabric of society, as I said earlier,
Yes.
and empowering the youth to become informed, engaged, and good ethical members of the communities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think
So,
responsible citizens, because I see the
yeah,
youth as the next change makers for the
yeah,
country or the society. So very aptly said, Indra. But
yeah,
on that note, when good journalism has such a profound effect on our youth and everybody, right? In your
yeah.
experience, do you
Yeah.
reckon the relationship between the journalist and the audience, has that dynamic changed over the years?
Oh, 100%. I think over the years, relationship between journalist and the audience has undergone significant transformations.
Mm.
And this is, of course, largely influenced by, technological
Yes.
advancement, shifting media landscapes and evolving audience behaviors.
Mm.
You know, if you ask me, some of the key changes are, in terms of things like increased activity, democratization of content creation,
Right.
and fragmentation of audiences. So if you want to me to touch on a bit on this, I can
Oh,
sort of,
yeah, yeah, please do.
yeah. So when I talk about increased interactivity, with the rise of digital media and social networking platforms,
Mm.
relationships between journalists and the audience has become more interactive, right?
Okay. Mm. Mm.
Audiences can now sort of directly engage with journalists, provide feedback, ask questions, contribute
Mm.
to the whole news making processes through comments, shares, and likes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, when we talk about democratization of content creation, we have, we have this proliferation of user generated content and citizen journalism,
Mm.
which has like sort of democratized the whole production and dissemination of news.
Right.
Audiences are no longer passive consumers, but active participants in shaping the news agenda,
Mm.
often sharing eyewitnesses' accounts, photos, and videos of breaking news. I mean, you know that yourself, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the other one, the other thing is the fragmentation of audience.
Mm.
So, with the advent of online news sources and social media, there we have, you can see now a fragmentation of audiences,
Yes.
so because people, instead of solely relying on, traditional news outlets,
Mm. Mm.
now audiences have, an access to a diverse, range of sources, perspectives, opinions, and catering to their individual preferences and interests, isn't it?
Yes.
So what then happens is a decline of trust in mainstream media. So the trust in the mainstream media has declined in recent years, partly due to the perceptions of biases, sensationalism, and misinformation.
Mm. Mm.
As a result, journalists face greater scrutiny from their audience, requiring them to be more transparent,
Mm.
accountable, and responsive to public concerns.
Mm.
Yeah, does that sort of answer the question?
More than answers, Indra, because I was about to ask you that if you can elaborate on the
Yeah.
democratization which you
Yeah,
did.
but if I can add just one more point,
No.
so
Yeah.
the overall, the
Mm.
relationship between journalists and the audience has become sort of more dynamic, interactive, and complex also at the same time in the digital age,
Yeah.
because with these technological advancements, audiences are now empowered, with greater access to information and participation in news ecosystem.
Yes. Yeah.
So they have also presented the challenges in maintaining, trust, credibility, and journalistic integrity.
Absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
that also partly somewhere helps in removing a bias. I think because
Yes.
when it's such a transparent dynamic going on, you can't
Yeah.
bias. So you kind of partially provided a segment to the next question that I had for you, Indira, which is that
Yeah.
for a layman or for people like us, how do you
Yeah.
actually define digital media? And what is the impact of these digital platforms on news media as such and its consumers?
Okay. So digital media, as we all know, refers to any form of media content that is stored, transmitted, and accessed electronically, right?
Yeah.
So this includes, websites, social media platforms, mobile apps, podcasts, online videos, digital newspapers, and more.
Yeah.
Digital media has profoundly transformed the way news is produced, distributed, and consumed, reshaping the media landscape in several ways. So when I say several ways, for instance, one, we have instantaneous dissemination. Like, anything happens, news digital platforms are able to publish, distribute content instantly, to a global audience. I mean, we are so interconnected now, the world. So breaking news, updates, developments, they can be shared in real time, providing consumers and, with immediate access to information as it unfolds, right? So we have 24/7 accessibility. Unlike traditional or print or broadcast media, digital platforms are accessible 24/7 from anywhere within someone with an internet connection can access news any time of the day, 24/7, right? So consumers can access news contents at their convenience across various devices, smartphones, tablet, computers, blah, blah, without being bound by geographical or temporal constraints. And then now we have another aspect, which is multimedia storytelling. Now digital media allows this integration of multimedia elements such as videos, photos, infographics, interactive graphics into news stories. And this enhances the storytelling experience, making news content more engaging, immersive, and informative for consumers. This allows audience interaction and participation.
Right.
So digital platforms, facilitate a two-way communication between producers and consumers, thereby enabling audiences to engage with content, through comments and shares and all of that, direct messages, etc. So social media platforms, in particular, have sort of transformed news consumptions into a social experience where users can discuss, debate, and share stories with their networks, isn't it? I mean, Twitter is one example of, or X, as we call it now.
X, yeah.
And then I can talk a lot about digital media because I'm working on it now. So, and digital media platforms also, we use algorithms and user data, right, to personalize news content based on, your preference and interest and browsing history, etc. So this allows now consumers to receive tailored news, recommendations, curated content, and engagement. But there is also the challenges of misinformation and disinformation along with this, right? So what happens is the democratization of content creation and the viral nature of digital platforms have also facilitated the spread of misinformation and disinformation. False or misleading news can proliferate rapidly on social media, which sort of then undermines trust in traditional news sources and posing challenges for consumers in discerning credible information from falsehoods. So, but overall, I think digital media has democratized access to news and information, empowering consumers with greater choice, convenience, interactivity. So, however, it presents challenges in terms of information overload, trustworthiness, and the spread of misinformation, highlighting the importance of, media literacy and critical thinking skills in the digital age. That's what I would say.
Absolutely. I agree to everything, especially with the curated content that you just mentioned. It's everything on my laptop or my fingertop. The other side, which I want to ask you next, Indira, is you mentioned about filtering out information from misinformation, right? So what happens when a journalist is attending a real-time political press conference? Now, in that situation, it can be a volatile situation. How can we get that information accountability? How do we ensure that what information is coming to me from the journalist is biased, is absolutely neutral and transparent?
See, it all actually depends on the journalist's, skills such as information gathering, public oversight, checking, all of that. A journalist has to, go through these grinds. So if I was to explain, firstly, I think journalists attending press conferences to gather information about government policies, decisions, actions, etc. They ask questions to elicit responses, right, from political leaders, seeking clarification, context, and insights, pressing issues of public interest. So obviously, so this information has to be accurate. So you expect that the journalist attending that press conference will present you with the accuracy of information, right? And they have to remember that they serve their role. Their role is as watchdogs, holding people accountable, for the actions and decisions, asking the right questions, and to sort of ensure transparency and integrity in the whole process. And then, fact checking is very important, verification. Journalists have a responsibility to fact check the information provided. During press conferences, they have to verify claims, counterclaims, statements, statistics to ensure, again, all of that truthfulness and, so as to combat misinformation and disinformation. So this whole critical analysis, I think, is very important because journalists have to analyze and interpret the information that is shared during the press conferences. So, so they have to provide context, analysis, and perspective, and they have to assess the implications, of for instance, if they're attending a press conference by a government official or a minister or whatever, they have to assess the implications of, those policies or actions or whatever the person in question is offering, so that the journalists can in turn offer insights into their potential impact on society, economy, governance. So I think that as far as and ethical standards is very important, and journalists must adhere to professional codes of ethics and standards, which means that they should always allow for accuracy, fairness, impartiality, all those things that we learned in school. So they should report, objectively without bias or undue influence, and avoid conflicts of interest that may compromise their independence and credibility. I think this is what I would say.
Absolutely. You've hit the bullseye. So thank you, Indira, on that one.
And also I feel that, one last thing, I feel that journalists should promote, media literacy. And as I mentioned earlier again, because I think this is important, they should promote media literacy and critical thinking skills among the audience to, sort of empower them to assess and evaluate news coverage, right? Independently. So, by providing context, analysis, and fact-checking resources, journalists can help audiences navigate the complexities of of any kind of discourse, and make informed decisions as active participants in a very democratic society.
I agree. And on the other side, Indra, as an audience, it's also our responsibility, as you mentioned, to be more media literate, media savvy, and to be able to assess and evaluate what information coming to me is accurate and what is can be taken out and checked out. So it's a two-way road from what I evaluate from you, what I
absolutely, yes.
Thank you, Indra. One last question is, what would be your message to our listeners, anyone who might be listening to you?
Okay, my message to listeners is that they should stay curious, they should stay informed, and stay engaged, in today's fast-paced world. It's more important than ever to seek out reliable sources of information, question assumptions, and explore diverse perspectives. As consumers of news and media, you have the power to shape the narrative, hold leaders accountable, and drive positive change in your communities. So keep asking questions, keep seeking the truth, and above all, keep listening with an open mind and a critical eye. I think that's the way we can build a more informed, equitable, and a vibrant society.
Thank you, Indira. The last line was gold, absolute gold. Considering whatever is happening around us, we need to keep our ears and eyes open. It is the dark. Thank you, Indira. So To my listeners, this was Indira Laisram joining me from Melbourne. She's with the Indian Sun. Please check out her journal, her link, everything on Facebook. What she does is amazing for the community. Those of you who've heard us for the first time, I really hope you've liked what we spoke about, because journalism today is more about being responsible on both sides, the journalist as well as the audience. We need to be media aware, we need to be media literate, and we need to keep our heart, ears, and eyes open and be empathetic, because we are living in a rather crazy time right now. And of you who have heard me for a while, I hope that you like what I put on the content, on the table as content. And if you've got any thoughts or feedback, please write to me at Awaz-e-Haqiqat@gmail.com, or else you can also find me on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram as Awaz-e-Haqiqat. Please reach out. I would love to hear from any and every one of you. Indra, on that note, thank you so much for joining me. Have a great night.
Thank you, Chris. It was a pleasure. Thank you.